Have you ever had that one person who looks at your hard-earned stuff and decides, you know what? This should belong to everyone, and then actually treats you like the bad guy when you say no? Imagine this. You're relaxing at home, minding your own business, and suddenly someone in your neighborhood starts acting like your backyard, your private pool, your safe space, is some kind of public community center they're entitled to control. And when you finally stand your ground and tell them calmly, "This is my property," and the answer is no, they don't just get mad. They call the police on you. Lights, sirens, neighbors peeking through their blinds, all because you refused to share something that you paid for. Now picture 3 squad cars rolling up in front of your house like they're raiding a crime scene. And the crime is that you wouldn't let the HOA president turn your private pool into her personal public project. Crazy, right? But that's exactly what happened to me. And the way it all played out was so over the top. You honestly couldn't make it up if you tried. Before I tell you how my quiet, normal day turned into a full-blown showdown with the HOA and the police, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments. If your HOA tried to take over your private pool, would you give in or would you fight back? I really want to know whose side you'd be on, because this story gets wild. All right. Let me take you to the exact moment it all blew up. The sirens were the first thing I heard. That sharp, echoing wail that makes your stomach drop for no reason, like you did something wrong even when you didn't. 3 police cars rolled up to my quiet suburban driveway, like they were about to bust a drug ring. Lights flashing, engines rumbling, neighbors' blinds lifting one by one. And there I was, in old cargo shorts, a faded t-shirt, and flip-flops, holding a garden hose, just watering the flower bed, totally confused. One of the officers stepped out, calm but serious, hand resting near his belt like he'd done this 1,000 times. "Sir," he called out, "we received a call about threats involving pool access. Are you Ethan Morrison?" I literally laughed. I couldn't help it. Pool access? Yeah, I'm Ethan. But the only thing I've threatened today is my tomato plants if they don't start growing. And then I saw her. Standing behind the officers like she was leading a parade, clipboard, folders, and that tight, forced smile, was Beverly. Beverly, our beloved, by herself, president of the Maple Ridge HOA. You know that one person who thinks the entire neighborhood is their personal kingdom? That was Beverly. She had her hair sprayed into place, pearls on, and a stack of color-coded folders hugged to her chest like legal ammo. I could already feel a headache forming. "There he is," she announced, pointing at me like I was some wanted criminal. "Officer, that's the man. He threatened me when I tried to implement community pool access for Maple Ridge residents." The lead cop looked at her, then at me, then back at her. "Sir," he said carefully, "did you threaten this woman?" I took a deep breath. I knew right then. This was one of those moments. One of those crossroads where you either lose it, or you stay calm and let the truth do the work. "I told her," I said slowly, "that she can't use my private pool for her water aerobics class. That's it. No threats. Just no." Here's the thing Beverly didn't know, and this is where the story really starts to turn. She had just called the police on the one guy in this neighborhood who had spent 15 years as a property and contract lawyer. Me. So yeah, she picked the wrong pool. Now, before we get to how everything exploded in her face, let me give you a little backstory, because this wasn't just about a pool. It was about control, entitlement, and one woman who thought an HOA gave her superpowers. I'm 38. A few years back, I walked away from a big corporate law firm job. Good money, horrible life. I started my own practice helping regular people with property disputes, zoning issues, and all that boring stuff that suddenly becomes very interesting when your neighbor thinks your fence is half an inch too tall. Business went well. Well enough that I finally bought my dream house on a quiet cul-de-sac called Sycamore Court, in a neighborhood named Maple Ridge. The house checked every box: 4 bedrooms, big shady trees, garage, updated kitchen. But the real prize? The pool. Not some tiny rectangle. I'm talking about a gorgeous, curved, resort-style pool with a waterfall, soft LED lighting at night, and a deep end that just begged for cannonballs. The whole thing was wrapped in a tall, solid fence that gave total privacy. My backyard felt like a little retreat from the world. And being the lawyer that I am, I went over that property deed like it was a final exam. The pool and everything around it were clearly listed as private amenities, not HOA property. Not shared, not subject to community access. Mine. I even had a lawyer friend double-check it, just in case. So when I signed those closing papers, I thought, great, I worked hard, I followed the rules, I finally get my peaceful home with a private pool. I didn't know yet that Beverly was coming. About 6 months after I moved in, she showed up. Beverly bought a house down the street, and within 2 weeks, she was running the HOA, literally. She somehow convinced everyone that the previous president had mishandled the flower beds at the neighborhood entrance. Flower beds. That was her platform. Next thing we knew, she was elected president. And she took that role very seriously. She walked around like a one-woman inspection team. She'd send emails about the approved shades of beige for fences. She'd write warnings if someone's grass was a little too tall. She even left a note on my mailbox once because my trash cans were visible for all of 30 minutes. Annoying, sure, but I kept my head down. Grass cut, trash hidden, paint within code. I didn't give her any reason to bother me. At least, that's what I thought. Then came the neighborhood summer barbecue, the day everything changed. And here's another hook for you. Imagine a single innocent compliment turning into a full-blown war over your own property, because that's exactly what happened. We had tables set up on the front lawns, kids running around with water balloons, grill smoke floating through the air, the usual summer vibe. At some point, a couple of neighbors asked if they could see the pool. So I opened the side gate and let a small group step into the backyard. People oohed and awed, and I felt pretty good. Hey, I'd worked hard for this. That's when Beverly wandered in. She froze as soon as she saw it. The waterfall, the clear blue water, the stonework. You could see the gears turning in her head. "This is stunning," she said. Her tone had this strange mix of admiration and calculation. "Thanks," I replied, smiling. "It's my favorite part of the house." She didn't smile back. You know, a pool like this could really benefit the whole community. Imagine morning water aerobics for the seniors, afternoon playtime for the kids, weekend gatherings. It could be our Maple Ridge Wellness Center. I laughed it off. Yeah, it's nice to have. I'm happy people can see it from here at the barbecue, but it's just for my family and guests. Private. She squinted at me, like she'd just heard the word no for the first time in her life. That moment, that tiny conversation, was the start of her mission. Because from that day forward, Beverly decided my pool wasn't my pool anymore. It was an underused community asset, and she was going to fix that. First, it started with comments at HOA meetings, little jabs disguised as neighborly concern. Some residents have private amenities that could be shared for the good of the community, she'd say, glancing in my direction. We should encourage equal access to recreational resources. I sent her an email afterward, polite but direct, reminding her that my pool was private property and not subject to HOA rules. She didn't respond. Then came the letters. One day, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope with the HOA logo. Inside was a formal-looking notice, bold font, legal-style language, strongly encouraging me to open my pool for scheduled community wellness hours. I wrote back again, this time including a copy of the deed with the relevant section highlighted. I even quoted state law about property rights. I thought that would be enough. It only made her more determined. Weeks went by. More letters, each one more dramatic. Phrases like community expectations and shared responsibility. She mailed out a survey to the entire neighborhood, asking whether residents believed all aquatic facilities within Maple Ridge should be available for community program use. Most people thought she meant the actual neighborhood pool down by the clubhouse, so of course lots of them checked yes. Beverly took that survey like it was the Constitution. She started telling people she had a community mandate to expand pool access. Then one morning, I walked outside and froze. There, hanging right on my backyard gate, was a laminated sign that read, Community Pool Hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday to Friday, Community Pool Hours, on my gate. I tore it down, changed the lock on my gate, and that's when I stopped being patient. I started documenting everything, emails, letters, photos, not because I wanted a fight, but because I knew one was coming. Still with me so far? If you are, hit that like button and comment Team Property Rights, so I know you're riding this madness out with me, because the best part is still coming. The morning she called the cops, it was early. Barely 6 a.m., the sun was just coming up when my phone buzzed with an alert from my backyard security cameras. I opened the live view, and there she was. Beverly, in a tracksuit, tape measure in hand, walking along the inside of my fence line, inside my property. I went outside, still half awake, heartbeat already picking up. Beverly, I called. What are you doing in my yard? She didn't even look embarrassed. I'm conducting a safety inspection, she replied sharply. The fence might not meet the proper height standards for a pool that will be used by the community. We have liability to consider. Used by the community? I repeated. This is my private pool. You do not have permission to be in my yard. Leave. Now. Or I'll take legal action for trespassing. I said it calmly. No yelling, no cursing, just facts. She went quiet. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, she looked almost stunned. Legal action. Those two words lit a fuse in her head. In her mind, I hadn't just protected my rights. I had threatened her. A few hours later, those 3 police cars rolled into my driveway. Back to the present. I'm standing there with my garden hose while Beverly hovers behind the officers, clutching her folders like evidence in a courtroom drama. Officers? She insisted. He threatened me when I was trying to carry out my duties as HOA president. He's hoarding a community resource and refusing to cooperate. The lead officer, his badge said Davis, looked like a man who'd seen some nonsense in his career. "Ma'am," he said, flipping open one of her folders, "these appear to be newsletters and pool party flyers." "It's context," she snapped. "Page 7 shows community support. Page 14 outlines the long-term vision for pool access. We have a mandate." I stepped forward. Calm voice. Steady breathing. "Sergeant, I have security footage from this morning," I said. "It shows her entering my yard without permission, and it records everything I said to her. Would you like to see it?" I watched the shift in his eyes as he realized this wasn't the simple, he threatened me situation she'd described. "Yes, sir," he replied. "Let's take a look." I pulled up the footage on my phone, the video of Beverly sneaking along my fence line, tape measure out, like she was planning a prison break. They heard my voice loud and clear, me asking her to leave, me warning that trespassing could lead to legal consequences. No shouting, no threats, just boundaries. Sergeant Davis handed the phone back with a nod. "Ma'am," he said to Beverly, "telling someone you'll pursue legal action for trespassing is not a criminal threat. That's actually what a property owner is supposed to do." Her face went red. "He's hiding a pool that could serve 20 families," she blurted. "He's selfish. The neighborhood voted for expanded access." "Is this a private pool?" the officer asked me. "Yes," I answered. "Fully private, deeded that way." "Then it's not a community resource," he said simply. You'd think that would have been the end of it. But if Beverly was good at anything, it was doubling down. She yanked another folder from her bag and held it up like a trump card. "I have documentation that shows the original property lines are wrong," she declared. "His pool extends into the HOA's common area by 2 feet, so it's at least partially community property." Now that got my attention. "Can I see that?" I asked. She hugged the folder to her chest. "This is official HOA business." Sergeant Davis stepped in. "Ma'am, if you're alleging a property dispute, we need to see the documents." Reluctantly, she handed it over. Inside were what looked like blueprints and survey maps, county stamps, lot lines. It looked legit at first glance. But when you work in property law as long as I have, certain details jump out at you. Something felt off. I zoomed in on the stamp. The date read 1998, but the font used on the county seal wasn't adopted until years later. And the surveyor's license number? That belonged to someone I knew had died long before that year. I pulled up the county records website on my phone, fingers moving almost on autopilot. Within minutes, I had the real, official records on the screen. They didn't match what Beverly brought. Not even close. "Sergeant," I said quietly, "these documents have been altered. The date, the seal, the license number. None of this lines up with the actual county files." His jaw tightened as he compared the pages. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "did you create or modify these documents?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then stammered, I may have adjusted them for clarity. The original lines were confusing. I corrected obvious errors." I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. "You forged county records to steal access to a private pool." "For the good of the neighborhood," she barked. "That pool is too nice for one person." That was it. The switch flipped. The sergeant got on his radio calling for a detective. The other officers started photographing the documents like they'd just stumbled onto a crime scene. Because they had. What started as a bogus threat call now looked a lot like forgery. and that's a very different situation. While we waited, I went back inside and grabbed my own folder. The property deed, the plat map, emails from Beverly, screenshots from my security system showing her drone hovering over my backyard on multiple days. Yeah, she'd flown a drone over my yard to take pictures of the pool. Obsessive much? When the detective arrived, Beverly tried the misunderstanding route. I was just trying to fix old mistakes, she said. The documents were outdated. I enhanced them so the truth would be clear, and I installed a camera aimed at his pool to monitor safety issues. What if a child got in? The detective blinked slowly. You installed a hidden camera? Pointed at his backyard? For safety, she repeated, starting to sound desperate. He wrote something down. Ma'am, that's unlawful surveillance. Between that and the altered documents, you're looking at multiple charges. She went pale. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I have executive authority. I folded my arms. That's not how the law works, I said softly. News travels fast in a neighborhood. By that afternoon, everyone knew something had gone down. By evening, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. The community center was packed. People stood in the back. I took a seat off to the side, documents in my lap, while Beverly sat at the front table, still clinging to her title like a life raft. She slammed her gavel. Yes, she actually owned one. I move to invoke Article 15 of the Maple Ridge Charter, she announced, voice shaking but loud. Presidential immunity for actions taken in good faith for the benefit of the community? The treasurer, Harold, rubbed his temples. Beverly, he sighed. Article 15 is about emergency landscaping expenses, not felonies. It's a gray area, she shot back. I stood up. If I may, I'd like to address the board. You have no standing here, she snapped. This is an internal HOA matter. The board secretary, Margaret, turned toward her. Actually, she said, as a homeowner and the person whose property is involved, Mr. Morrison absolutely has standing. So I walked up, calm, measured. But inside, I was still amazed it had come to this, all over a pool. Board members, I began. Ms. Hutchinson's actions haven't just harassed me. They've put the entire HOA at risk. If she forged documents under the HOA's name, conducted illegal surveillance, and filed a false police report, any lawsuit that follows could drain our reserves and raise everyone's dues. People started shifting in their seats. Nobody likes to hear the words raise and dues in the same sentence. I continued, I've prepared a cease and desist letter regarding her harassment. My attorney will be filing a civil suit for defamation, trespassing, and intentional infliction of emotional distress if this continues. I'm not here to attack the HOA. I'm here to protect my rights and keep all of you from paying the price for her choices. Objection! Beverly shouted, slamming her hand on the table like she was in a movie. He's using scare tactics. This is intimidation. Harold ignored her. He glanced at the other board members, then cleared his throat. In light of what we've learned today, he said, I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Beverly's role as president. Seconded, Margaret added quickly. He raised his hand. All in favor? Every hand at that table went up. Every single one. Beverly's shoulders dropped. Her eyes glistened. You can't do this, she whispered. The pool project was going to be my legacy. Harold sighed. Your legacy will be the new bylaws we write to make sure this never happens again. She stood slowly, gathering her color-coded binders with shaking hands. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. As she started to leave, I spoke one last time. "For what it's worth," I said, "I'm hosting a small pool party this Saturday. Neighbors and board members are invited. It's still private, invitation only. But if you ever want to enjoy it the right way, you're welcome as my guest." A few people laughed softly, not at me, at the ridiculousness of how far she'd taken things. Beverly didn't say another word. She just walked out. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, the district attorney officially charged her, multiple counts of forgery, filing false documents, and unlawful surveillance. Her attorney managed to negotiate a deal, probation instead of jail time, a hefty fine, mandatory community service, and a restraining order that said she had to stay at least 100 feet away from my property. I went to the sentencing hearing. She stood in front of the judge, fighting back tears. "I was just trying to help my community," she said. "I didn't think it would go this far." The judge looked at her calmly. "Ma'am," he said, "helping your community does not include forging government records or spying on your neighbor's backyard. That's not service. That's a crime." Her shoulders shook as the sentence was read. 2 years probation, a $5,000 fine, 300 hours of community service, and strict conditions. As I walked out of the courthouse, I took a deep breath of fresh air. It wasn't just relief about the pool. It was relief that for once, someone like her, someone who thought rules applied to everyone but her, had finally hit a wall she couldn't push past. And here's the real question I still think about, and I want you to think about it too. Where do we draw the line between community and control? Between being a good neighbor and becoming the neighborhood tyrant? Because sharing is great. Helping others is great. But the moment sharing means I get to decide what happens on your property, that's not kindness, that's entitlement. So if you've ever dealt with an out-of-control HOA, a nosy neighbor, or someone who thought your hard work was theirs to redistribute, you're not alone. If you made it this far into the story, let me know in the comments. Whose side are you on? Team Ethan or Team Community Pool? And have you ever had a neighbor cross the line like this? I love reading your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more wild, real-life stories like this. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and share this with someone who's fighting their own HOA nightmare right now. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.